picked ones. There's something scary about the silence after a storm, not the relief kind, but the kind where you realize the eye of the hurricane wasn't the end, but the warning. Throughout history, civilizations, nations, and even individuals have thrived under the presence of the divinely assigned. Often they don't realize it. They mistake grace for luck, protection for coincidence, and divine warnings for background noise. And then, one day, the chosen are gone. The ones who spoke the truth no one wanted to hear, carried a presence no one could explain, and upset things that needed to be disturbed. They were gone, leaving a void that no one saw coming. If you think this is just a metaphor, think again. Throughout history, the sudden absence of key people has led to major events. Fall down. In the Bible, when Lot left Sodom, there was war, chaos, and punishment. When Jesus left the temple, there was also destruction. People often don't realize how important certain people are until the damage is already done. If you laughed at the chosen, ignored their words, or brushed off their warnings like spam emails, now might be the time to start paying attention. Because when God says your mission is over and it's time to leave, it's not just an exit, it's an event. And trust me, no one likes what comes next. For starters, you weren't here for comfort. You were here for collision. People who are God's chosen don't get to blend in. They can't go through life quietly, unnoticed, or unbothered. Their very presence causes conflict, not because they want it, but because they carry something that upsets the status quo. When they walk into a room, they change systems that have been holding on to false stories for years. People have to choose whether to align with the truth or fight it. Cycles of generations' spiritual comfort starts to break. There are times when people feel uncomfortable and don't even know why. It's not about style or charisma. There is something deeper going on here, a divine mission that doesn't let corruption stay hidden. This is why God's chosen ones often face rejection, betrayal, and resistance. People are taken away from us not because they're doing something wrong, but because they're doing exactly what they were sent to do. They weren't put here to make peace with dysfunction. They were sent to expose it. They weren't sent to be liked. They were sent to be a reminder that darkness still has an expiration date. But here's the thing. They were never meant to stay in one place forever. When their mission is over, God takes them away not as an afterthought, but as a planned move. Some people will realize that what they resisted was the only thing that was keeping judgment at bay. The chosen weren't here for comfort. They were here to crash into something that was never meant to be there, and when their job is done, they're gone. That's statement number 2. Your exit is a divine plan, not an escape. Leaving doesn't mean losing. It doesn't mean failure, surrender, or unfinished business when God pulls his chosen ones out. It's not because they weren't strong enough to stay. It's because their very presence has already done what it was meant to do. They were never called to fix everything, only to shift the atmosphere. Once that's done, their removal is not just necessary, it's strategic. Some might see their departure as abandonment, others might assume. It means they weren't as powerful as they seemed. That's the mistake people always make. They assume God's chosen ones are meant to hold up the weight of everything indefinitely, as if their strength prayers, their very existence, is what keeps things from falling apart. But in reality, they were only ever meant to be a warning, a catalyst, a temporary shield. Once they're gone, the consequences of what was ignored, dismissed, or fought against will come full force. People rarely understand the significance of someone's presence. Until that presence is removed, when the chosen are gone, things don't just stay the same. They unravel, not because the chosen ones wanted destruction, but because their departure is proof that grace has shifted. God never just pulls his people out of a situation. It's always a sign that something is about to change, and not in a way that most people are ready for. those who thought they had more time, those who thought they could keep resisting, and those who thought they were in charge are about to find out what happens when the ones who were blocking the storm are no longer there. For when God moves his chosen, he's not just moving people, he's moving history. Number 3. Because you were there, a problem was solved, and everyone no longer needs you. God doesn't just put his chosen ones anywhere. They are sent to certain times, places, and people for a specific reason. Whether it's a country, a city, a family, or even just one person, their presence is the answer to a spiritual problem. Most people don't even realize they're in a crisis until it's too late. But here's the truth. They were never meant to stay. Their role was temporary. Their mission had an end date, and their presence was a divine response to a problem that couldn't be solved any other way. Once the problem is solved, either by revealing it, shifting it, or giving people one last chance to change, there's no reason for them to stay. This is where most people go wrong. They think chosen ones are just permanent parts of their lives, always there, always praying, always carrying the weight. They don't appreciate the wisdom that covers the warnings. Some people even fight or dislike them because they think they'll always be there, but then they're gone. No reason given, no weight, just gone. When the people who ignored them start to feel their absence, the peace that surrounded them, the supernatural favor and the silent protection are gone. That's when they realize that the chosen ones weren't just another voice, person, or presence. They were the reason things hadn't fallen apart sooner. When God removes his chosen, it's because their task is complete. And for those left behind, that's not a relief, it's a warning. Because when the ones carrying the light are gone, it doesn't just come back, it takes over. 4. God didn't send you to your beloved. He sent you to serve as a warning. People love the idea of being picked by God until they understand what it really means. It doesn't mean being praised, liked, or accepted. Means going to places you're not supposed to and saying things people don't want to hear. It means being called tough, crazy, or even dangerous. Prophets weren't praised because they were right. They were stoned, sent away, and killed because they wouldn't be quiet. Jesus, the best person who ever lived, wasn't welcomed. Instead, the people he came to save betrayed him and put him to death. So why should it be any different for those he sends? God's chosen ones are not assigned to comfort people in their illusions. They are sent to tear them down, to expose lies, to shake up systems, and to remind the world that God is watching. But here's the problem. People love darkness more than light. They don't want to be awakened. They want to be left alone. So when a chosen one steps in, carrying truth like a sword, resistance is inevitable. The rejection isn't personal, it's prophetic. The world has always pushed back against the messengers of truth. They mock, dismiss, or try to destroy them, thinking that if they silence the messenger, they can silence the message, but the truth remains, and so does the consequence of ignoring it. So if you find yourself misunderstood, rejected, or even hated, don't be surprised. You weren't sent to win. Hearts you were sent to warn them whether they listen or not is up to them. But your mission was never about being loved. It was about making sure they had no excuse when the time came. Number 5. The world was never going to change the way you hoped. There's a painful reality that every chosen one has to face. Not everyone will change. No matter how much truth they receive, you can preach, warn, pray, and pour everything you have into people, but some will never wake up. Not because they don't understand, but because they don't want to. It's easy to believe that if you just say the right words or show people enough love, they'll open their eyes. But the truth is, some hearts are set in stone. Some people aren't asleep. They're actively resisting the truth because it threatens their comfort, their power, or their illusions. And no matter how hard you try, you cannot force transformation that only God can bring. That's why your mission was never about fixing the world. It was about giving the world a chance. Every word you spoke, every warning you issued, and every moment you spent trying to wake people up wasn't for your own pleasure. It was so that when everything they ignored finally falls apart, they won't be able to say, "I didn't know." It's not your job to make people listen. It's your job to deliver the message. Some will change, some won't. But either way, you did what you were sent to do, so don't give up. Don't let their decisions define you. Sixth, you were never sent to change the world the way you thought you would. Instead, you were sent to make sure it had no excuse when it was time to judge. Your pain wasn't for you. It was a message in flesh and blood. Everything you went through, the betrayals, it wasn't just you who was rejected, left alone or hurt. It wasn't punishment, bad luck, or random difficulty. It was a message. You were a warning in the form of a live thing. People who have been chosen by God don't just say the truth. They are the truth. They carry the message in their own wounds and battles before they even speak. Their lives preach a sermon. People can ignore their words, but not the evidence written on them. Instead of being wrong, your life showed what others wanted to hide. So you were attacked, misunderstood, and doors were closed. You didn't just talk about endurance, you lived it. You didn't just warn about betrayal, you felt it. Your suffering was the proof. It showed that everything you said wasn't just theory, it was real, and those who watched had to choose. They could either learn from what you went through, or they could act like they never saw it. Some people will wake up because of your pain, while others won't care until they feel it themselves. Whatever happened, don't think of your scars as just wounds. They are proof that you carried the message. You weren't sent to warn people, you were sent to be the warning, and whether they listen or not, your life will show that they had every chance to pay attention. Right now, your quiet says more than your presence ever did. Sometimes people don't realize what they have until it's gone. They hear but don't listen. They see but don't understand. And then one day you're gone. No more warnings, no more prayers, no more presence holding things together. That's when reality hits. Your absence isn't just a disappearance, it's a divine announcement. The people who fired you will start to see the change. They lost the peace they thought they had, the protection they didn't even know was there, and the wisdom they laughed at all of a sudden made sense. This is how God works. He takes away his chosen ones not just to protect them, but also to wake up those who wouldn't listen when they had the chance. Some will think about it and realize they were wrong, while others will not. People may attempt to fill the void with someone else, but the experience won't be the same because what you brought was more than just knowledge or kindness. It was a divine task, and assignments cannot be altered for convenience. People won't just hear what you said, they'll also feel the lack of what you carried, and that's the real warning. Remember that the silence you leave behind will be louder than any words you ever spoke. If being with us was a form of grace, then being away from us shows that grace has boundaries. Number 8. Those who ignored, laughed at, or turned you down will have to live with the fact that they had something rare and divine and let it slip away. Your assignment was a final test for those around you. Your presence in people's lives was never random. It was a test for them, not you. They were recording how they treated you, how they responded to you, and whether they listened or rejected you. Some people thought they were dealing with a normal person, but in reality, they were dealing with a divine assignment that would last forever. People have been sent by God as warnings, chances, and second chances, but the same thing happens over and over. They are ignored, abused, or attacked. Jesus himself was rejected in his own hometown. Prophets were mocked, ridiculed, and even killed. The world has a history of failing these tests and suffering the consequences afterward. Some of the people you encountered had a chance to recognize who you were and align themselves accordingly, but instead they gossiped, doubted, or even worked against you. They had the opportunity to receive a blessing, but they chose to fail. Not because they didn't know better, but because they refused to accept that God had placed something sacred right in front of them. Now the test is over. Their response has sealed their fate. The time they had to treat you correctly, to listen, to take heed, it's gone. Some will realize too late who you were and what you carried. But realization doesn't erase the judgment that follows when God removes His chosen. It's not just about relocation. It's about putting an end to those who refuse to accept that the test has been graded, the results are in, and now they must live with their choices. The war is bigger than you. Your removal is a tactical move. Your life isn't just about you, and your purpose isn't just to make you happy or comfortable. You're a part of a much bigger spiritual battle, and when God moves you, it's not by chance, it's a plan. A soldier doesn't question why the general moves them from one position to another. They trust that there's a bigger plan. When God pulls you from one place to another, it's because your assignment has changed. You might think you're in the right place, doing the right things, holding your ground is important, but God sees the battlefield from above and knows the whole plan. Sometimes that means repositioning His chosen ones when your role is done and your presence in a certain place or season is no longer needed. God takes you out of the way so the war can be won in a different way. This is hard to understand when you're in the middle of it. You might feel like you're being left behind or even thrown away, but your removal is part of a bigger plan. There are many battles in the war, and sometimes the best way to win is to move the pieces in ways we can't understand. Trusting God's timing and strategy requires faith that doesn't depend on seeing the end result right away, but on believing that His plan is bigger than what we can see at the moment. When He removes you, it's not because you failed, it's because your position has changed, and the war moves forward in a way that's bigger than you. Number 10. Many people don't realize that your presence wasn't just a comfort, it was a shield. God's favor rested on places, people, and situations because of you. You were the covering they didn't deserve, the grace they couldn't earn. Your life was like a spiritual umbrella, extending protection and mercy where it wasn't asked for or even acknowledged. While you were there, they were protected by the grace that God poured over you. But when your assignment is over and God removes you, that umbrella is taken away. The grace they enjoyed and the protection they didn't realize they were relying on is no longer there for them. The consequences they avoided while you were there will now catch up to them, whether it was a family that stayed together, a company that flourished, or a community that thrived. All of it was possible because you were there in the center of it, with God's favor surrounding you. The reality of your removal will hit hard. The peace that they didn't realize came from you. Gone the favor that seemed to follow them without explanation. Now they'll see it for what it truly was. Borrowed, temporary, and tied to your presence. Some will try to call on that protection after you're gone, but it will be too late. The covering you provided was never there to keep. It was always a result of your obedience, your faith, and your assignment. For some, this will be a wake-up call, a harsh realization that the grace they took for granted has vanished, and now they'll have to face the consequences of their choices, and they'll wonder, perhaps too late, why they didn't recognize the weight of your presence sooner. 11th. You caused trouble for a short time, not permanently. You were never meant to be a constant fixture. God places His chosen ones in a way that not only prevents them from settling down, but also ignites chaos. You weren't sent to fit in or be a constant. You were sent to be a temporary force of divine disturbance, a wrecking ball meant to shake things up and get things moving. And let's be honest, that kind of fire doesn't burn forever in the same place. If you had stayed too long and tried to settle down, it would have put out, and what was once a blaze of truth and change would have turned into a pile of cold ashes. God doesn't send his chosen to fit in. He sends them to unsettle. Whether it's a situation, a way of thinking, or a group of people, you were put there to stir things up, to challenge, to awaken, and sometimes to make people uncomfortable. That's the job of the divine wrecking ball, to destroy what isn't based on truth, to tear down what isn't rooted in God's will, and to shake people out of their comfort zones. People would have stopped listening if you stayed too long. The sting would have subsided, and the task would have been completed. Forgotten about God's fire isn't meant to be smothered by familiarity. It's meant to burn brightly, strongly, and with purpose. When it's time to move on, it moves on before it gets dull. Your time in that place was always temporary. Your presence wasn't meant to last forever. You were sent to make a difference and then move on. The necessary change will persist even after your departure, as stated in number 12. For many, success means seeing the results of their hard work, but for you, it was about planting. You were called to the hard ground, the places that no one else could reach, the soil that was too dry or rocky for anyone else to work with. Miss wasn't supposed to gather the harvest. She was supposed to break through the hard, resistant spots, tilling soil that seemed impossible to touch. It's easy to feel like your work wasn't finished because you didn't see the plants grow, but that wasn't your calling. You weren't supposed to stay long enough to see the plants grow, sprout, or the plants grow. It was your job to get the land ready for someone else. You were the one who broke down walls and removed situations that other people thought were impossible, beyond repair. And even if you didn't see the results of your work, you planted seeds in soil that others would eventually tend to. Not all seeds sprout right away. Some will take years, and some may never even be seen in your lifetime. But that doesn't mean your work wasn't valuable. You were a cultivator, not a harvester. The hard work of getting ready for a harvest is sometimes the work that no one sees. Your mission was never about instant gratification. It was about planting seeds where others were afraid to walk, hopeful that someone else would come along and pick up fruit. Number 13. People will judge you more now that you're gone than when you were here. When God takes away his chosen, it's never a quiet, unnoticed exit. It's always a clear warning that something is about to change, and not in the way people think it will. You weren't just there. You were the last call, the last warning. If God takes you out of a position or place, that doesn't mean you're no longer influential. It means that judging is about to start. Consider this. Your presence there wasn't just to speak words. It was to stop a wave of consequences and stand between God's wrath and those who needed mercy. While you were there, you may have felt like the voice that no one listened to or the person who wasn't respected, but your presence kept the storm at bay. Now that you're gone, the storm can come. The processes, people, and places you changed will now have to deal with the consequences of what they did. This isn't about punishing you. It's about holding other people responsible for how they treated you, ignored the signs you gave, and ignored the message you carried. It all has consequences. Your departure doesn't mean the end of your influence. Now is the time for them to answer for how they reacted to what you brought. Those who made fun of or hurt you will now see what happened because they wouldn't know the messenger. When God moves his chosen, the awakening will be too late. The quiet that follows isn't peace. It's the start of judgment. And for those who didn't listen, your departure will be the loudest reminder that they had their chance. It wasn't about getting praise, fitting in, or getting approval from the people around you. It was always about obedience. You were called, you answered, and you did what you were sent to do. There was no need for praise or approval because your reward was never tied to earthly recognition. It was about fulfilling your purpose, no matter how lonely or misunderstood it was. Now it's time for you to leave. Don't look back. What was done is done. Your assignment is firm, and nothing can change that. The lives you touched, the seeds you planted, and the words you spoke have all been recorded. Your obedience was sufficient. No one can take away what God has planned for you. You came, you obeyed, and now it's time to go. The work you did wasn't for you to see the results. It was for the greater purpose God had for you and those around you, so don't question your path or wonder if it was worth it. You were sent, you obeyed, and now you leave just as it was written. Your time here is over, and the rest is in God's hands. Trust that the impact you made will continue to ripple, even if you can't see it. You've done your part, and now you can leave knowing you fulfilled your purpose exactly as it was meant to be. If this message spoke to you, don't just let it sit there. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Please click the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on more powerful insights like this. If you liked the movie, please leave a comment to let us know what you think. What part of this spoke to you? Your voice matters, and it could be the push someone else needs. Also, don't forget to share this film. Share this with a friend or family member who might need a wake-up call, a new perspective, or just a little push to remember they are not alone on this journey. Help them find the truth by doing so. Let's keep the conversation going, spread the message, and remember that we are all a part of something much bigger. Your participation means the world. Let's keep moving forward together. Thanks for watching.